What's up, everybody? Dr. Rossi, shrinksandSneakers.com. Today I'm going to cover a new Medication Monday topic, the combination of dextromethorphan and bupropion, also known as AXS-05. So the result of the research to create a non-addictive cough suppressant resulted in the production of dextromethorphan. Now, this is a common medication that's available over the counter in most cases, and something that it has been around since the 1950s. It was actually FDA approved in 1954, but the pharmacology of this medication is actually quite complex, and there's been a renewed interest in it as a potential psychiatric medication. So let's go into how this functions and a little bit about why it may be a good medication for psychiatry to revisit. So dextromethorphan functions as what we call an on-competitive NMDA glutamate antagonist. So that's complicated. I'll break it down a little more. So NMDA glutamate blockers are things like ketamine, right? This is one of the proposed mechanisms by which ketamine helps treat depression. So naturally, you can already see dextromethorphan having a similar mechanism of action may help treat depression. Now, it also has a little bit of other benefits from a psychiatric perspective, and that is called sigma-1 stimulation. So sigma-1 is another receptor that's sometimes stimulated by certain psychiatric medications. It's been helpful in things like depression. And then it also acts as a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. So three things that could potentially benefit someone taking dextromethorphan who has a psychiatric disorder, namely depression. So it should become clear now why this medication, again, people are renewed interest in it and why it might be a good thing to look at. Now, here's where it becomes interesting, because you might say, well, okay, why don't we just use dextromethorphan by itself? Why do we have to add bupropion to the mix? So bupropion, as I've covered in previous videos, is a medication that's been around since 1985. I believe it was FDA approved for depression. And it is a norepinephrine dopamine reuptake inhibitor. So this is going to block the reuptake of norepinephrine and dopamine, thus increasing norepinephrine and dopamine levels. So it's currently used to treat depression, like I said, also seasonal affective disorder, also nicotine dependence. So anyone that has those three conditions, these are sort of the FDA approvals for it. Now, recent research has revealed something interesting, though, and that is that bupropion is what we would call an inhibitor or potent inhibitor of the cytochrome P450 2D6 enzyme, right? So this doesn't really matter in a long discussion on cytochromes and what they do, etc. is probably beyond the scope of this short video. But the bottom line is that cytochrome P450, and specifically 2D6, is the enzyme that's going to metabolize dextromethorphan. So what this is going to be doing is, by combining bupropion with the dextromethorphan, you're going to allow dextromethorphan to be around for a longer period of time. That's what it's going to do. It's going to delay the breakdown of that medication. So a little bit beyond the scope, at some point we'll discuss P450 system, but for now, just know that this 2D6 enzyme metabolizes dextromethorphan, and one of our goals here is to prolong the length of time that dextromethorphan will be active in the body. To do that, we use bupropion, which is going to block that enzyme that's metabolizing it. Now, the combination of these two drugs would be 45 milligrams of dextromethorphan along with 105 milligrams of bupropion 2 times per day, and that creates your AXS-05 medication. The proposed mechanism, like I've already said, is to sort of prolong dextromethorphan's activity by inhibiting 2D6, but there's also the added benefit, right, of dextromethorphan having sigma-1 stimulation as well as serotonin reuptake inhibition, and you get the added benefit of bupropion's norepinephrine and dopamine reuptake inhibition. So combining all these things together, that's what creates the antidepressant effect, and that was what was seen in a phase 3 randomized controlled trial where they looked at patients with MDD, and they found that AXS-05 outperforms placebo when you start looking at depression rating scales. So it's better than placebo It's proven in a randomized controlled trial that lasted 6 weeks. And this is something that's potentially on the horizon as a medication to treat depression. So we'll see where it goes. Again, interesting. I always think it's good to go back and look at medications that have previously been used or may have properties that have recently been discovered for benefits with depression or other psychiatric disorders. So that concludes the video on the combination of dextromethorphan and bupropion. If you guys like the channel, please subscribe. And if you have comments or questions about this new medication, drop them below and we'll try to answer them.